Well, it's getting dirty. It's getting dirty. She's a very bright woman. I'm a little surprised that she includes.
Legendary sportscaster Dan Patrick just lit a fuse that's about to blow up the entire WNBA. In a shocking interview that's sending shockwaves through the basketball world.
Included Caitlin Clark in the conversation. And even though they have the same agent, it feels like the WNBA turned on Caitlin Clark. Now they're turning to Caitlin Clark to say.
Patrick didn't hold back, delivering a brutal truth bomb that has league executives scrambling and fans picking sides. His message? The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark way more than she needs them.
Hey, you know what? We need her. Hey, this private conversation I had with the commissioner said Caitlin should, be thankful. She should, everybody should.
And folks, when you hear what sparked this warning, you're going to understand why this might be the most important moment in women's basketball history. Because right now, behind closed doors, a war is brewing that could either catapult the league into a golden age or send it crashing down just as it's reaching new heights.
Get down on their knees because the amount of money. This commissioner, has done some positive things. They have 5 new expansion teams coming up.
And at the center of it all is a 22-year-old phenom who's holding all the cards. Let's rewind and understand how we got here. The WNBA is currently in the middle of collective bargaining agreement negotiations, and calling them tense would be the understatement of the century. They got a
TV deal, so there's some positives there. It's the role of the commissioner is kind of to give the presentation of
is a full-blown civil war between the players and the league, with the current CBA set to expire on October 31st. That's right, we're talking days away from a potential implosion. The Players Association opted out of their 8-year deal early, and now everyone's fighting over money, revenue sharing, and who really deserves what?
The growth of the game, but also keep the players down. You got to keep them down to a certain level. There's only so much of a financial pie that's going to be available.
But here's where it gets absolutely wild. While all this negotiating is happening, the league's biggest star, the woman who single-handedly changed the game, is making just $78,000 in salary. $78,000.
To these players. Are they going to make $300,000? Maybe someday, but Caitlin Clark shouldn't make $78,000 a year.
That's less than what some middle managers make. Meanwhile, off the court, Caitlin Clark is raking in $16 million from endorsements, sponsorships, and deals that have nothing to do with the WNBA. So you've got this massive disconnect where the league is paying her peanuts while she's out there building an empire that's making everyone around her rich. The tension...
And then be thankful that she gets to make $16 million off the court. The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark does not need the WNBA.
Is palpable. The stakes couldn't be higher. And then someone went and dropped a nuclear bomb into the negotiations. Minnesota Lynx star Napheesa Collier, one of the league's top players and someone deeply involved in these CBA talks, just revealed something that has everyone's jaws on the floor. In what was supposed to be a private conversation,
Put out your hand. Well, let me reach out to you. You reach out to me. Hell, bring in Adam Silver. He can be like the third hand reaching out.
NBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert allegedly told Collier that Caitlin Clark should be thankful. Thankful for what, you ask? According to Collier, the commissioner said Clark should be grateful that the league gave her the platform to make those $16 million off the court. Let that sink.
ESPN, before he left to start the Dan Patrick Show, which has been widely, I guess it's been around 20 years now.
Sink in for a second. The commissioner of the league supposedly told a player that their biggest star, the woman who's brought more eyes to women's basketball than anyone in history, should be thankful for the opportunity to make real money somewhere else because the league sure isn't paying her. The audacity of that statement is absolutely breathtaking. It's like telling LeBron James he should be grateful the NBA let him make money from his Nike deal while paying him minimum wage. The message is clear. Know your place. Be grateful for what we've given you and don't ask for more. But here's the kicker that makes this even more explosive. Napheesa Collier and Caitlin Clark share the same agent. Think about that conflict of interest for a moment. The commissioner is having private conversations with one star player about another star player, and they're represented by the same person. The whole thing reeks of backroom politics and power plays, and it raises a massive question. Who really has the leverage here? That's exactly where Dan Patrick comes roaring into the picture like a freight train with no brakes. During his appearance on Outkicks, Don't At Me with Dan Dakich, the 69-year-old broadcasting legend who's seen it all in his decades covering sports absolutely unleashed on the WNBA. Patrick didn't mince words. He said flat out, the WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark does not need the WNBA. And then he proceeded to break down exactly why that's the cold, hard truth. Patrick pointed out that Clark shouldn't be making $78,000 a year and then be expected to be thankful that she gets to make $16 million off the court. He called out the league for what he sees as a fundamental misunderstanding of their own position. Clark is bringing in tens of millions of new fans. She's the reason arenas are selling out. She's the reason merchandise is flying off shelves. She's the reason networks are paying attention and sponsors are lining up. And the league is paying her crumbs while acting like they're doing her a favor. Patrick called the negotiations dirty, and he said it feels like the WNBA has turned on Caitlin Clark at the worst possible moment. His analysis cuts to the bone because he's articulating what millions of fans are thinking, but maybe couldn't quite put into words. What made Patrick even more pointed in his criticism was a surprise that Commissioner Engelbert would bring up Clark in that conversation with Collier, especially given their shared representation. He's a veteran of sports media who understands how these games are played, and even he found that move questionable. The implication is clear. This is about power, control, and reminding stars that the league, not the players, calls the shots. But Patrick is saying that calculus has fundamentally shifted, and the WNBA hasn't realized it yet. For the first time in the history of women's professional basketball, a player has more bargaining power than the league itself. That's never happened before, and it's turning the entire negotiation dynamic on its head. Now, Commissioner Engelbert came out swinging with a denial. At a press conference last week, she flat out rejected the claim that she made those comments about Clark. Obviously, I did not make those comments, Engelbert stated firmly. She went on to praise Clark, calling her a transformational player who's been a great representative of the game and has brought in tens of millions of new fans. The praise was effusive, the denial was absolute. So now we've got a classic he said, she said situation, except it's she said, and one of these women is telling the truth while the other isn't. Collier has no obvious reason to lie about a private conversation, especially when it puts her in an awkward position with her own agent and potentially damages her relationship with the commissioner. But Engelbert also has no reason to make those comments publicly after supposedly making them privately. So who do you believe? And more importantly, what does it say about the state of the league that we're even having this conversation right now, with the CBA deadline looming and the future of women's basketball hanging in the balance? Let's talk about why this matters so much, because this isn't just insider basketball politics. This could genuinely determine whether the WNBA becomes the powerhouse it's always dreamed of being, or whether it fumbles the greatest opportunity it's ever had. The Caitlin Clark factor is real and it's measurable. Her games are drawing record-breaking viewership numbers that shatter anything the league has seen before. Attendance spikes wherever she plays, with arenas that used to be half empty suddenly packed to capacity. Social media explodes every time she takes the court. New demographics, people who never watched women's basketball before, are suddenly tuning in because they want to see what all the hype is about. Her Nike deal alone is worth millions, and that's just one of her many endorsements. She's not just a basketball player, she's a cultural phenomenon. And here's the dangerous precedent the league is setting. If they alienate their biggest star, if they make her feel undervalued and unappreciated, what message does it send to the next generation of superstars? Why would a talented young player want to dedicate her career to the WNBA if they watch Caitlin Clark, the face of the league, get treated like this? The timing couldn't be worse for this kind of internal conflict. The CBA expires in days. 5 expansion teams are on the horizon. The league just signed a new TV deal that was supposed to be a game changer. This should be a moment of celebration, a victory lap for how far women's basketball has come. Instead, it's chaos, finger-pointing, and a public relations nightmare that's making everyone look bad. To be fair, let's examine all sides of this complicated situation, because it's not as simple as league bad, player good. The players have a legitimate case. They've been underpaid for decades, working second jobs in the off-season, playing overseas to make ends meet, and watching the men's league generate billions while they scrape by. They want what they deserve, and they're fighting for revenue sharing that reflects the actual value they bring to the table. They're fighting for all players, not just the stars, and there's nobility in that collective approach. The league, on the other hand, has financial realities to deal with. Women's sports, despite massive growth, still operate on tighter margins than men's sports. Growth takes time, infrastructure costs money, and sustainability matters more than short-term gains. Commissioner Engelbert has actually accomplished some impressive things during her tenure. She's brought in expansion teams, secured that TV deal, and helped elevate the league's profile. She's trying to balance player demands with the long-term health of the organization. But then there's the Caitlin Clark question that complicates everything. Should she get special treatment because she's a transcendent star? Or does everyone rise together because a rising tide lifts all boats? It's the fundamental tension between star power and collective bargaining, and there's no easy answer. Dan Patrick isn't the only legend speaking out about this situation. Charles Barkley recently issued his own warning to WNBA players about these contentious CBA negotiations, and his message echoed similar themes. Multiple voices from the men's sports world are watching this unfold and saying the same thing. Be careful. Don't blow this opportunity. Understand the moment you're in. The fact that established figures from men's basketball are weighing in shows how much attention this is getting and how high the stakes really are. This isn't happening in a vacuum. What happens with this CBA negotiation affects the entire ecosystem of women's sports. Other leagues are watching. Potential investors are watching. Young girls who dream of playing professionally are watching. And they're all asking the same question. Can the WNBA figure this out? Or are they about to implode right when they're on the verge of something special? So, what happens if they can't get this resolved? Let's play out the nightmare scenarios. A work stoppage or lockout would be catastrophic for momentum. Just when casual fans are starting to pay attention, the league goes dark. That's how you lose people permanently. Clark could seriously consider overseas options where Chinese and European leagues pay significantly more than the WNBA ever has. Imagine the league's biggest star deciding that playing in Shanghai or Barcelona is more financially sensible than staying in America. The momentum that's been building collapses like a house of cards. Sponsors who are excited about the growth potential get nervous and pull back. Fans who are just starting to care lose interest and move on to other things. It's a domino effect that could set women's professional basketball back a decade. But here's the best case scenario. They get a deal done that satisfies everyone. Clark gets properly compensated in a way that reflects her actual value. The league continues its historic growth trajectory, and women's basketball reaches heights nobody thought possible 5 years ago. That's what everyone should want, but getting there requires both sides to recognize reality. And that brings us to the core message that Dan Patrick understands better than most people in this conversation. For the first time in WNBA history, a player has more leverage than the league. Caitlin Clark could walk away from professional basketball tomorrow and be absolutely fine. She doesn't need the WNBA to make millions. Her brand is strong enough. Her endorsements are lucrative enough. Her opportunities are diverse enough that basketball could be a side project rather than her primary income source. But the WNBA absolutely cannot afford to lose her. She's the golden goose, the face of the resurgence, the reason the league is finally getting mainstream respect. Without her, they go back to being a niche sport that most of America ignores. That power dynamic is unprecedented in women's basketball, and it changes everything about how these negotiations should proceed. The question isn't whether Caitlin Clark will be okay without the WNBA. She will be. The question is whether the WNBA will be okay without Caitlin Clark. And the honest answer is probably not. So here we are, days away from a CBA deadline, with the league's biggest star caught in the middle of a messy negotiation, with accusations flying about what commissioners said or didn't say, with legends like Dan Patrick issuing stark warnings about what's really at stake here. Is Patrick right? Does the WNBA need Caitlin Clark? more than she needs them? The evidence suggests he's absolutely correct. This is a moment that will define the future of women's professional basketball for the next generation. They can get this right and usher in a golden age where players are properly valued, stars are celebrated, and the sport reaches its full potential. Or they can get this wrong, alienate their biggest asset, and watch everything they've built start to crumble. The clock is ticking, the pressure is mounting, and everyone's watching to see if the WNBA realizes the truth before it's too late. Because Dan Patrick just said out loud what a lot of people have been thinking. The league needs her a whole lot more than she needs them. And if they don't figure that out fast, they're about to learn that lesson the hardest way possible. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and if you want extensive details, links are given in the description.